I'm so glad you called me, Mr. DeWinter. I was making a hasty departure. It was so rude of me not to let you know. But a cable came this morning announcing that my daughter is engaged to be married.
That's rather a coincidence, Mrs. Van Hopper. I asked you up here in order to tell you of my engagement.
You don't mean it? Oh, how perfectly wonderful. How romantic. Who is the lucky lady?
I apologize for depriving you of your companion in this abrupt way. I do hope it won't inconvenience you too greatly.
When did all this happen?
If you love listening to this show, please consider giving a rating and a review on Amazon Alexa or wherever you listen. We want to continue bringing you this amazing content, and part of our ability to do that means that we need a big audience. Now, it may not seem like much, but rating and reviewing the show will help more people find us, just like how you found this show. Simply on any podcast platform, search for a show, scroll down to the bottom, and push 5 stars. It's that easy. Thanks for supporting the show. Today, I'm joined by Maury Blackman, who is the president and CEO of Premise Data. Thanks for joining today.
Thank you, Scott. Glad to be here.
Wow. So you are an 11th time Ironman finisher. And I love that kind of suffix portion where, people try it, but it's another thing to actually finish it. And here you finished it, including the 2008, 2013 Ironman World Championship in Hawaii, Kailua and Kona. And so I wonder, why are you so passionate about Ironman, which again, most people probably can't even begin to fathom that level of work and just hard training that is required, and the intensivity really, and how that crosses over to your work and the kind of business that you're building.
Yeah, it was, it's kind of something I really just fell into, Scott. I moved out here to San Francisco and, had a kid on the way, and, it's just a lot of different things were going on in my life. And I'm 5'9", and I ended up gaining, probably 40 pounds. So I was in the low 200s. And, at some point I just said, I got to start working out again. I got to get myself in shape. I have military background, so I was always in great shape. And I got on a bike, and I tried to ride it across the city of San Francisco, and I pretty much couldn't do it. I mean, it has hills, and I was just really struggling. And I kind of sat back when I got home, and I thought, what, I need to get focused on working out. And I saw, I'm a very goal oriented person, so I always need something to strive for. And I just happened to be walking down Chestnut Street in the marina, and I saw a flyer to do an Ironman over on Treasure Island, which is on the Oakland side of the bay here. And so I just said, hey, you know what? I got 4 months. I'm going to sign up. I'm going to do this. And, so I put together a small little program for myself to work out. And, I got out there and did that race, and I basically fell in love. I said, this is really awesome. In that 4-month period of training, I lost about 20 pounds. So that was great. And, next thing I knew, I was signing up, this was just a sprint triathlon. Next thing I knew, I was signing up for a half Ironman. And next thing I knew, I was doing a full Ironman. And what I found, and I think a lot of CEOs and entrepreneurs and founders, this will resonate with you. There's so much noise going on in the world on a day-to-day basis. We open our email boxes and we have hundreds of emails. We get text messages. We're on Slack. All this noise is around us a lot of times, and we don't get a lot of time to really think in our heads about what's important for our business, what's important for our lives. And, for me, what I found is that these longer workouts gave me time just to focus on me and think about the business, thinking about strategy, thinking about, what's a good next step for me, whatever that might be. And, so that kind of quiet period in time when, no one was going to bother me really became important. And, I started, I'm a type of person that needs a lot of structure in my life. I always have to have a goal. I always have to have something going on. So what I found is that, hey, I'm getting up early at 5 a.m. every morning to start my workouts. Boom, boom, boom. By 8 o'clock, I'm sitting at my desk ready to roll. And, I felt fresh and invigorated and just very loose overall. So Ironman itself, gave me a goal and a focus to achieve. But at the end of the day, what it really did is it really gave me a period of time where it was just about me thinking what was important and where I wanted to go, not just for myself personally, but for my business.
Yeah, this is two aspects. One is as I'm listening, I'm already feeling fatigued and tired, and I'm not the one that's exercising or doing Ironman. But the second part is, I think what you're saying is really profound because, it's one thing to try to go into your office or a conference room to innovate, right? Ideate. It's another to be in this emotional, psychological, and physical activity that really kicks the neurons and synaptic connections into incredible firing. And just like, like dance and movement, for example, really connects all of us holistically. It's something, from a neurotransmitter perspective that you can't replicate easily. And certainly the kind of stress that you're putting forces your body to have to put aside all the other distractions, kind of the noise that oftentimes occupy our brains, which is really the thing that actually allows us to be defocused from the key decisions and the things that we should be focusing on. So I love what you're talking about. And by the way, I was going to joke about exercise, but I'm also an exercise enthusiast. And whenever I go to my taekwondo, because I'm working on my second and third degree black belt, after class, it's so quiet in my brain. It's like I can literally just hear nothing, which is great, which means that, you not only feel just the adrenaline and all the good endorphins, but you also feel quiet. And that's when you can be most productive. So I love what you're saying.
Yeah, I always tell people my best ideas have come on like a really long, 4 or 5 hour bike ride or, a nice, 2-hour run. And while those seem, like tiring or exhausting to a lot of people, I think if they try it, what they would find is it's truly invigorating and, gives them a totally different perspective on things. So there's a lot, in today's environment, there's a lot of talk about work-life balance. And, I definitely think that's an important thing for our workforce. But I think that what I encourage people to do is to really focus on, exercise and fitness to kind of do what you're talking about, to kind of clear the mind and get it going.
So Maury, I'm already a big fan of you because, especially in Silicon Valley with everybody trying to squeeze out that last ounce of productivity and ability to, really ink out their thought process, from microdosing to who knows whatever else that they're abusing. But I love the fact that you're disciplined and you're focused on using natural means to get that kind of focus and attention and productivity. So I love it. My question, and then we'll go to premise data in just a second, is you're also an Army veteran who served as a field artillery officer. And I want to kind of ask a little bit in terms of what that experience was like. And I know many that have been in your, kind of your role have, issues around hearing as well as just, it's tough being in that environment, right? It's a tough thing. So I wonder what that was like and how that has also prepared you for the work that you're doing today.
Well, I think, for me, being an ROTC, being an Army officer, going through in my early formative years, going through that type of training was transformational for me. I like, most young boys. I mean, you were one too. We probably don't remember it, but I was pretty immature at 18 years old and wasn't ready for the world. And what really happened was when I joined ROTC and I started doing some military training, it put me in uncomfortable places. Not just physically, but from making presentations and briefings to senior officers in the active military. And, so what it really provided me was a training ground to, be able to hone, leadership and management skills. That's what these programs are all about. So coming into the workforce at 24 years old with, lots of military training and briefing of senior officers and organizing and planning and essentially leading a team of men, young men, was really gave me a competitive and strategic advantage over my peers who were also entering the workforce at the same time. One of the things that we teach people in the military is, when people ask for a volunteer, the best people will put their hand up first and say, yes, I'm in. And, this served me so well so many times that in my first job at a company called Invest Tools, the CEO came in and said, hey, Paul Allen has invested in this business and he wants me to come to San Francisco and do a presentation about our products. Who wants to come? And, I jumped up and I said, I do, and everybody kind of looked at me like, wow, this guy's pretty brave to be, going to San Francisco with the CEO and briefing, one of the richest men in the world. But for me, it was just, another day, another dollar. I'd done this. I've briefed generals and colonels, very senior officers in the military. I got, dressed down many times. So I wasn't intimidated at all, by, the prospect of briefing Paul Allen with the CEO. And I had a structure and a format that the military, taught me on how to present, that when I stood in front of Paul and his team, they were like, this young kid's got his act together, so that was, it was really great for my career. And, fortunately I never saw combat. I kind of skirted both wars. So that would have been a different experience, but overall, my experience was very positive. And I look back at those time period in the training and the learning I had with very fond memories.
Part of the reason I really love to ask these types of more kind of personal questions is it really gives insight into someone's leadership and management style and their thinking process and their philosophy. So to me, it's been more enlightening than if I had just asked you about your management style or leadership skills. So this was great. So let's talk about premise data. And I think I kind of have a good sense in terms of how you're potentially leading that type of organization. But what is the big problem that you're trying to solve?
You may also like our quarterly Ask Your Perkins event that brings some of the most notable experts and category leading startups in their area of sustainability and human survival on Earth and in space. To register, visit astroperkins.com/events.
Well, at the highest level, we have a global network of contributors. These are ordinary individuals that we recruit through social media. They download our app, we run them through training exercises. At the output of that, they can enter into a task marketplace where our clients have listed small little data collection jobs where they want to get insights into local markets, into brand performance, into policy effectiveness. Really anything that is gathering them data that helps them make decisions. So, in today's world, one of the challenges that I see is that everyone pays a lot of lip service to, we want to make data-driven decisions. But there's not a lot of people in the world who are actually out collecting data that's relevant, that can help guide them with insights that are appropriate and founded in what we would call the ground truth. You can gain a lot of information from, scraping the web, social media, but, a lot of times that data could be potentially erroneous. And so what we do is we provide the leading organizations in the world, the biggest brands, the largest companies, with the capability to put eyes and ears on assets, on marketing campaigns, on products on the shelf, do things that, we never even thought were possible at a on a global basis.
Yeah, I think what's really very much noticeable is if you look at some of the largest data companies that boast very advanced AI and data scraping types of strategies. Not going to mention names, but at the end of the day, when it comes to really the kind of area of the work that you guys are doing, they send people on a clipboard with piece of paper, and they observe people's behavior and write it down on a piece of paper and come back and tabulate that into some sort of a spreadsheet. I mean, that's unfortunately still more or less kind of the world that we're talking about. Is that, am I too far off?
No, you're 100% right. We're in the market intelligence space. The TAM for this space is massive. It's a $45 billion TAM. People spend a lot of money gathering insights, data, and doing research to help them make decisions. And those processes that are in place, as you mentioned, are archaic. It's the same companies, the same processes that have been around for the past 50 years. And so what we're doing is really using technology to accelerate and change the landscape in a disruptive way at scale. And we think that our product at Premise, our contributors, the unique combination that we have blending human intelligence with machine learning and AI is going to be really impactful, both in the coming years and for years to come beyond that.
So I think one of the areas that I really find your business model really intriguing is the gaming mechanics. It's the incentive structure that allows for this kind of distributed freelancer, so to speak, to be able to really engage, and you are able to incent them to give the best types of observation and feedback, and also actually train them properly so that they're actually giving meaningful information. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Well, we do. I mean, our incentive is payment. So, what we've done is we look at the world, we've divided it up, and understand what appropriate payments are based on the amount of time people spend on these small little data collection projects. And so we're rewarding them by when we list tasks in our marketplace, we essentially put a payment amount next to it. So when people see the job that we want them to do, they're going to see, oh, this is a $1 job, this is a $15 job. And so they can reserve those, and once they complete the task and submit it, we run it through, some algorithms to make sure that, the data that we've received from them is accurate. And then once everything checks out, we pay them. Now, the payments, I think one of the things that you'll be interested in, and the audience here is that our payment wallet integrates with 11, 12, 13 different providers. But the most popular form of payment that we're seeing on Premise is crypto. So last year we paid over $1 million in Bitcoin out to our contributors, which, cryptos has been, so much in the news lately, and, the volatility of Bitcoin and everything's, going crazy even today. But what I think is unique about what Premise is doing is we're actually paying people for service. So it's not a trading scenario, a store of value. It's actually Premise is the early indicators of a medium of exchange.
I think it's fascinating. And in some ways, I feel like you guys are like an ambassador to Coinbase that's heavily marketing these days, because in some ways, you're actually allowing for a grassroots movement for non-accredited investors to actually understand cryptocurrencies, get comfortable with it, and also actually reap the benefit. Because unlike fiat, dollar currencies, whatnot, it doesn't really increase tremendously in value over time. But these crypto, if they got paid $10 today, but tomorrow it's worth twice or 5 times that, that actually adds some pretty interesting value proposition, but also risk as well.
Well, if you ask ordinary Americans about Bitcoin, they're intrigued, right? They're super interested, but they don't know how to earn Bitcoin. It's still, somewhat of this mysterious world to so many people. And, what I'm excited about is kind of our ability to unlock that for, ordinary individuals. You bring a really interesting point too, because one of the other things that we're exploring as a form of payment is using some of these micro trading platforms that are out there where, people can invest small amounts of money and own a piece of a company. So really become an owner in the world. And so what we're experimenting with is having people when they cash out, they can either take some of that money and put it right in their bank account, and the rest send to a micro trading platform where they can invest in, pretty much any stock in the world.
It's really interesting because now you're starting to, already you guys are in kind of the decentralization distribution of the workforce, but now you're starting to get into a little bit of fintech flavor as well. Very, very interesting, very innovative. And if anything, I just enjoy the agility and the openness of the thinking process, because I think it's very easy to think in terms of kind of legacy, because, there are other companies that have somewhat similar models, but it's like you go evaluate a store or a restaurant and you fill out the extensive form, you get paid, and it's done. Here, you're doing something much more interesting and intriguing. So I like that quite a bit. Let's talk about the enterprise customers that are using your services, and how are they looking to capture things around human sentiment through some of these observations? And I think there's also mention of additional data points, whether that's around geo-verification, as well as looking for identity validation, image resolution, and image subject, and of course, anti-fraud. And then so there's a lot there. And of course, human, it's a crowdsourced type of a solution. And then I'm really interested to understand the AI machine learning layer on top of it, how it's getting more sophisticated over time.
Don't forget to visit astroperkins.com to register for our next quarterly events. Past and current speakers include Julianne Hough, actress, dancer, and winner of Dancing with the Stars; Damian Vaughn, former NFL player; Neil Gregory, Chief Thought Leadership Officer at the IFC World Bank, and many more. To register, visit astroperkins.com and click on Events.
Well, I think at the basic level, a lot of our clients are looking to capture information on some of their own assets or competitive assets in the world. So one example that I can give you that I think is very unique and shows the power of what we're doing. We work with several banks who want to understand ATM locations around the world. And, so it's really easy to put a task in the marketplace and say, walk down Main Street, take a picture of every ATM and geolocate it. But that to me is it's a very static, one-dimensional view of an asset, that ATM machine. But what Premise is able to do that I think is very unique is that we've captured demographic information on our individual contributors. So we know their age, we know their sex, basic information. But when a contributor is walking down Main Street and taking pictures and geolocating these ATMs, we also ask them a couple of questions that are sentiment based. Do you feel that this ATM is in good working order? Do you feel, and this is the important one, do you feel it's safe? In a safe location? And, so those are data points that you wouldn't normally be able to collect. And one of the fascinating things is that we can understand, well, this ATM machine is in this location. These types of people feel it's safe. These types of people feel it's unsafe. And so it really gives you the ground truth on what the crowd thinks of this specific asset. So when you think about what the ramifications of that might be in a real world use case, when I pull up Apple Maps on my phone and, I'm interested in finding something, like we'll stick with the ATM example. I might say, I'm looking for an ATM. I need to get some cash. All I see on the map today is ATM locations. But, imagine this new world that we'll be entering into, where the views of that asset are not just 1 or 2D, but 3 and 4 dimensions of that particular asset. So then I can select an ATM and says, well, men between 50 and 60 feel that this ATM machine is in a safe location, and gives me just a little bit more insight into that particular asset and how it relates to me. And, that's a very crude example, but the reason I use it is because I think it's easy for people to understand. But now that I've given this example to you in the audience, I think what you can extrapolate from there is, by using your imagination, what does this really mean, right? And what are other points of interest that I might be able to collect data on and get these valuable multidimensional views of that specific asset?
Yeah, I think that's a great example. And by the way, this is why this is why we need to get payments in cryptocurrencies and not go to the ATM.
Exactly. We're not, but the problem is, in our perfect world, in our futuristic world, there probably won't be ATMs, but for the next 5 or 10 years, we're probably going to have to deal with them.
Yeah. But what's really interesting is that, and again, I know you haven't quite gone into it, but there's a lot of data that's been captured, both from an observation, but certainly there's images, because I'm sure you guys are using also computer vision as well as text analysis as well, is that you can start to understand the sentiment of the contributor, but you also can determine the sentiment of people in the photo, for example, even if it's anonymized, for example. So you're right that there's a lot of interesting things. It's not just simply demographics, geography, but then you layer in kind of the mental, psychological, and social and other aspects. And you start to create a pretty sophisticated model that feeds into persona and segmentation and targeting to a level that, frankly, it's tough, right? It's tough to do, especially offline. Online, maybe you could certainly do that through cookie tracking and various other mechanisms, but this is really nuanced. And I think that's the key, is that the approach that you guys are talking about from compared to traditional primary research methods really gives additional levels of dimension for the customers to really analyze and look at it and even ask the questions in a different way. Is that right?
That's 100% right. What I love about what it is that we're doing here is that, we're basically dissecting the world and pulling out nuggets of information that you would not be able to capture without this type of technology. What we're doing today, of course, is, the responsibility of how this became available is really due to smartphones and the power that they have, all the sensors on there that we can take advantage of. So the camera, the survey capability, all those things combined into one makes it a truly powerful platform that, the technology is finally here to be able to make all this happen.
So just to kind of tie everything together is, we talked about the Ironman as well as your military service, is that the kind of discipline and, kind of self-introspection and the transformation and the embracing discomfort, right, I think is very much reflected in your business, and it's exactly why you guys recently have closed your Series Z round. I think it was upwards of $85 million. So, it's a tough business to crack, and you're right that there's a lot of legacy incumbents. It's a big TAM, but at the same time, it's hard to really have that market share. But you're showing that through that methodical and yet innovative, creative approach, you guys are starting to crack into it. My last question for you is around lessons learned. Any type of project or product failures, whether it's at this company or prior, that you can share with others in terms of, just helping them to understand better?
Well, I think that, any startup you're working at, it's a grind, right? There's a lot of fits and starts. There's a lot of great days. There's a lot of bad days. But one thing that, kind of tying the Ironman story into it that I learned is that no matter what's happening around you, you just have to keep moving forward. My first Ironman I did, I was super stressed out about the race, and just, I had no concept about how this was going to all fit together, because, one of the amazing things about an Ironman is no one ever does an Ironman and you don't ever do the full distance in your training. You do parts of it, and then on race day, you pull it all together. So you can see how that might create some anxiety on someone's part. Like, I got to do the whole thing. But my coach gave me some advice, and, I took this advice and I use it on a day-to-day basis in my work. And he said, look, no matter what happens, just keep moving forward. Don't turn around and go back, because you don't want to backtrack. You got to keep yourself one foot in front of the other, one stroke, just keep it going. And so in business and in kind of my takeaway from that is that there's always going to be challenges, product failures, customer losses, a myriad of things that happen in the day-to-day world. And what you have to do is just kind of put the blinders on and just focus on moving your business forward every single day. We definitely here at Premise have had, some fits and starts. We're really excited that we just signed a really nice contract with Nielsen, and that's collecting, essentially data in stores. So they give us 6,000 SKUs on a, pretty much on a weekly basis. And we load those up into our system, and then people grab the tasks and start performing against them. And these are relatively high paying tasks. The first few iterations of this, the entire thing just went upside down on us. We couldn't, it overflowed the marketplace with tasks and crashed the system. Contributors couldn't figure out how to do the tasks, and the back-end management process we have in place was failing miserably. And so, what these opportunities give us a chance to do is to kind of take a step back and reevaluate the scale that we're operating at and kind of understand, how to get better. The challenge here in any business, any tech business, we find this all the time, is you have to be honest with yourself, and you have to be honest with your teams and your product to understand what those failures were and how to mitigate them and how to fix them going forward. So you cannot have a culture in your company where people are afraid to, number one, speak their mind, and number two, I'm going to call it experiment. That might not be the right word. It might be more, you have to have a culture where people are inspired to innovate and to try new things. And if it fails, it doesn't work out, they're applauded for those failures, not disciplined.
I love it. Lots of great insights, and certainly finishing the race and staying in the race is an important message to everyone. So thank you. With that, I have been joined by Maury Blackman, who is the CEO of Premise Data. Thanks for joining today.
Thank you.
If you've enjoyed this episode, take a moment to rate our show on any podcast platform that you listen to. Scroll down to the bottom and push 5 stars. It's that easy. And as always, thanks for listening.